Take a look at Metrolink's map and one thing soon jumps out. There's a glaring hole. Can you spot it? Perhaps you have even suffered from it yourself in trying to make a trip, but what can be done to address the shortcoming? Stick around to the end to get some insights on addressing this rail gap as well as solving another critical need in the inland transportation network. Hello and welcome to Inland Urbanist. Today we're going to continue to take another look at the service plan for the Inland Rail Vision. In part 1, we looked at a vision for the existing Metrolink lines which serve the region, the 91 PV line, the IEOC line, the Riverside line, and the San Bernardino line. In that video, we presented a compelling vision for getting better service throughout much of the inland region that is already served by Metrolink, as well as adding a bit by dusting off some studies. But being focused on existing lines meant that the shortcomings of the Metrolink system remain, namely that it is overwhelmingly focused on getting people to Los Angeles Union Station. Because of that, and because of geography of the inland region, and SoCal more broadly, Metrolink lines out here are best described as being east-west in nature. Though it is also true that there certainly are some segments which are more north-south, such as the Perris Valley sub and the San Bernardino sub or IEOC line between San Bernardino and Riverside. But it is not just trains which face that sort of constraint. Various geological features such as the Crafton Hills and Badlands, the Richard Canyon area and hills, and the hills which are between Fontana and Bloomington and Jurupa Valley are also all more or less situated east-west, as is the county line until just west of I-15. Together, those factors have led to a situation where intra-regional north-south travel can be a challenge regardless of the mode, as there are only a handful of places where it is possible to cross. Agencies such as Caltrans, RCTC, SPCTA, SCAG, and WRCOG have all done a fair share of study into the topic with various proposals on the table over the years. While some have never come to pass, others have been built or are in the works. On the transit front, that includes Omnitrans Route 215, RTA Route 200, and VVTA BV Link or Route 15. There are also some local bus routes in the western end of the San Bernardino Valley which facilitate crossing the county line, such as Omnitrans Routes 83 or 87. Though their service frequencies are not anything to envy. But there remains a lot of opportunity for better rail connections, and today we're going to take a deeper look at some of those ideas, including their routes and service visions. The first route to look at is a proposal for some service for the high desert. At present, it actually is possible to take a train for this trip, with Amtrak Southwest Chief service between LA and Chicago making stops in Barstow, Victorville, San Bernardino, and Riverside. In the past, the Desert Wind also made the trip, traveling between LA and Las Vegas and beyond, and there are proposals on the table to revive it, though we don't have a timeline on that revival yet. Additionally, this video won't be covering Amtrak long-distance services, but one proposal is to revive the route which ran from San Francisco to Chicago through the high desert. And at one point in the 2000s, someone floated the idea of a Victor Valley line for Metrolink. However, the goal here is none of those. Instead, this is a proposal to use the Brightline West infrastructure as a passenger spine for additional service. Although there is an agreement between Brightline West and SBCTA for commuter seats on some Brightline West trains, what they have is far from adequate, especially given how much government money is going into that project. Instead of just carving out a few seats, we need to run entire trains. However, it stands to reason that we do not necessarily need those trains to go all the way to Las Vegas to serve the mobility needs of travel to from the high desert. Thus, the first idea is for what could be called the Barstow Line. This would connect LA Union Station to the Barstow area, making use of the California high-speed rail infrastructure through Palmdale, and traveling over the high desert corridor once it is built, and finally the Brightline West infrastructure through Barstow. From there, the line was split off with a stop at Daggett before finally ending in Yermo. Station stops beyond LA Union Station would include Burbank Downtown, Burbank Airport, Palmdale, maybe Victor Valley, more on that later, Barstow, Daggett, and Yermo. This would provide a great option for people traveling between various parts of LA County and the Victor Valley and Barstow areas, and given that this will be entirely on high-speed rail infrastructure, it would be exceptionally time competitive with current travel options, as it will probably be possible to get from Yermo to LA Union Station in around an hour at most. The big question is how often should this train run, as it would likely not have additional stops beyond Brightline West once that is eventually routed to Union Station. The real question is how frequent Brightline West would be running. Their initial operations are supposed to be hourly, but would allegedly be halved in year 10 to 30-minute headways. At the same time, that is the plan based on the current Rancho Terminus idea, not the Palmdale or LA Union Station. On the other hand, their initial plan was for 45-minute headways that would be halved in year 10 to 22.5 minutes, while the timeline for the construction of high-speed rail to at least Palmdale and for construction of the high desert corridor is anyone's guess at the moment. Perhaps Brightline West might split their 2 trains per hour into an hourly train each to Palmdale or LA Union Station and Rancho. Thus, the Barstow Line could fill the gap to provide half-hourly or better headways, or maybe even be transitioned into a peak hour overlay if Brightline West services increase even more. But we're not done with the Brightline West tracks. In addition to Brightline West itself and the Barstow Line, the other service which is greatly needed is what could be aptly named the I-15 line. This would be basically the same as Brightline West itself through Rancho Cucamonga, just a local version with more stops. Starting from the north, Yerma would again be the end of the line with stops at Daggett, Barstow, Victor Valley, though perhaps there could be a real conversation of if that station is even needed anymore given the land use decisions which are being made in the area. Victorville, Hesperia, State Route 138, and Glen Helen before arriving to Rancho Cucamonga. From there, travelers to LA or other places along the San Bernardino line would be able to transfer to a train which could come as frequently as every 10 minutes. As an aside, this is perhaps a good place to discuss the idea of getting Brightline West to LA Union Station. Many people are calling for running Brightline West trains over the San Bernardino line tracks all the way to Union Station, but that does not seem to be the best use of Brightline West or the best outcome from their standpoint of view for a couple of reasons. First, the San Bernardino line is like the rest of the Metrolink network in that it is a purely diesel operation, though the hydrogen-powered Zemu will be roaming around soon. Thus, there would need to be electrification infrastructure installed from at least Rancho to Union Station. That in itself is not a problem and could be useful for helping to get the hydrogen hype out of the air at the Metrolink boardroom, but that's far from the only infrastructure upgrade that would be needed. At present, the San Bernardino line does not have the capacity to insert an hourly train in each direction that presumably makes no or few intermediate stops without greatly disrupting existing operation. Of course, it is not impossible to remedy that situation, but the question is at what cost, given the elephant in the room, the I-10 segment. This is also not the infrastructure video, so make sure you subscribe to see that when it arrives, but it would probably cost $3 to $5 billion just to do the double tracking and wires of the San Bernardino line. However, there is still the issue of Union Station itself, as it is not currently set up for the security situation that Brightline uses in Florida and would almost certainly use with Brightline West too. So that could easily be another couple $100 million to remedy, especially if High Speed Rail Authority and LA Metro try to foist some portions of Link US onto Brightline West to remedy if they are rebuilding parts of the station already. Finally, there's the whole grade crossing situation. Unfortunately, Brightline Florida has a bit of a bloody reputation. Brightline West, as currently planned, would be able to avoid the same stain because it would be running entirely in a grade separated and sealed right-of-way. However, if they go west of Rancho on Metrolink tracks, that changes as there are dozens of grade crossings between Rancho and El Monte. All of those grade crossings would introduce a lot of risk of schedule slipping due to crashes, which in turn would impact service on the Rancho Las Vegas segment of Brightline West. Thus, from the standpoint of Brightline West operations, it seems to be in their best interest to offload that risk onto Metrolink. Yes, the crossings could be closed and grade separated, but that would easily be another $3 to $5 billion, all that for a route which realistically speaking would not be able to run much faster than Metrolink does or could due to the geometric constraints. In summary, while it is true that the upgrades which it would take to get Brightline West to provide one-seat rides to Union Station from Rancho would be beneficial to the San Bernardino line overall, it does not seem that the opportunity for one-seat rides to Union Station on Brightline West trains themselves would be worth the cost over just offering the well-timed transfer, and the same goes for the I-15 line being proposed here. So if we're not going to go to Union Station with I-15 line, then where to instead? In several previous studies, SBCTA and other agencies have sought out a rail transit connection to Ontario International Airport, and at present they continue to throw good money after the ridiculous loop tunnel idea that even Elon Musk himself couldn't justify after he first threw it out. While we're on the subject, it's worth noting that at present there are in fact already transit options to the Ontario Airport in the form of a shuttle which runs between the airport and the Rancho Cucamonga Metrolink station, Omnitrans Route 61, which directly serves the terminals, and the forthcoming Omnitrans SPX West Valley Connector, or Purple Line, will also directly serve the airport and Rancho Cucamonga Metrolink stations, the exact same destinations that the loop would connect. But the problem SBCTA continues to have is to view the connection to the airport in isolation, instead of realizing the immense potential which exists. Planning to route the Purple Line through the airport kind of touches on part of the opportunity. But what they should do is take another look at those previous studies and turn to the pages detailing the rail connections and match them up with the Brightline West plans. In doing so, they would unlock the ability to make one of the best connected airports in the country by extending Brightline West's infrastructure to the airport. But this isn't just about getting to the airport. As noted above, RCTC, SBCTA, WRCOG, and other agencies have conducted studies on the topic of dealing with travel across the county line. In particular, transit options in the I-15 corridor remain elusive despite thousands of homes being proposed and built in the area. Then, though it is far from fruition, the plans for the LA to San Diego segment of California High-Speed Rail Phase 2 all include a trip to Ontario before heading down to America's finest city. Thus, a connector from Rancho to Ontario Airport could be tied into Phase 2, allowing all services on both lines to serve the airport. At the same time, though the final route for Phase 2 has not officially been chosen, the state rail plan presumes that it will be the option via I-15. Although the rough drawings of the situation envision high-speed rail staying in the UP corridor to reach I-15, I would posit that the connector used to reroute the Riverside line, as mentioned in the Part 1 video, could also be tied in and double as a connection to those freeway segments. By using that connector, the I-15 line would have the opportunity to serve the Ontario East station as well. Then, heading south, several more stations would be added to what is penciled in for Phase 2. Limonite to serve Eastvale or Rupert Valley, Corona North Main, Alberhill, Lake Elsinore, Wildomar, perhaps the Triangle in the Murrieta to Temecula area, Pala Mesa, Escondido, Poway, Miramar, and Old Town. This is actually not a wild idea just being conjured out of thin air. In fact, RCTC has done several studies of rail service in the I-15 corridor over the years, and one of the strategies which they landed on was to do exactly this: run a commuter service over the Phase 2 infrastructure. But unlike the RCTC studies, which only proposed a few peak trains, this ideally could have service frequencies of at least 2 trains per hour and optimally up to 4. It would be a local train, while Brightline West would be the express in the corridor, with its stops limited to the ones currently planned by Brightline West, though perhaps with the addition of Barstow and Baker. In the portion north of Rancho and on the segment shared with Phase 2, maybe. More on that later when the Los Angeles video drops. Only serving Corona, North Main, Temecula, Escondido, and San Diego that are planned for high-speed rail stops. That more or less wraps up the ideas for maximizing the government investment in the Brightline West infrastructure, but we're not done yet. Continuing the theme of naming rail lines after freeways, the other idea on the list for today is the 215 line. This one would more or less approximate the eponymous freeway running from Highland to Temecula. Station stops would include Highland, Mentone, all the stations currently served by Arrow, plus a station at California Street, then going beyond Arrow to also serve the San Bernardino stations. The 2 new stations proposed for the IEOC line in Colton and Grand Terrace, as mentioned in Part 1 video. Then it would interline with the 91 Perris Valley line from Hunter Park to Perris South, making all those stops, including the planned station to be built at the Ramona Expressway, which RCTC recently received a grant for. Then transition to the I-215 freeway itself, where it would have a station in Menifee, Murrieta, then the Triangle area and Temecula stations mentioned above on the I-15 line. This would provide a valuable connection in a growing but underserved corridor. Service is envisioned as at least every 30 minutes and maybe every 15 minutes at peak. In the portion between Riverside and Perris where it interlines with the 91 Perris Valley line, that would bring a train every 10 to 15 minutes at most and provide a connection for all of the communities along the route to get to transfer to other routes like Brightline West, High Street Rail, or the I-15 line in Temecula, the IOC line in Grand Terrace or High Grove, the 91 PV line at all the stations between Perris and Hunter Park, or the San Bernardino line and Coachella Valley trains in San Bernardino. Wait, what are Coachella trains doing in San Bernardino? Subscribe to get the Coachella video when it arrives. This too is not as novel idea as it seems, as RCTC has studied the portion south of Perris in the past, though only as an extension of the Perris Valley line, not as a combined service going north to San Bernardino County. However, they have also studied a variant of service in the I-15 corridor that would continue all the way to San Bernardino. It is worth noting that in the studies, both the I-215 alignment chosen here were considered as well as an alignment along State Route 79, which is a few miles east of the 215 freeway. Land is supposed to be preserved along the State Route 79 alignment for a rail corridor, so that might still be worthy of consideration. If you're local to the Menifee, Murrieta, French Valley, Winchester area, leave a comment below on which alignment you think makes more sense. Additionally, one of the concepts for high-speed rail Phase 2 to get to San Diego is along I-215, though it does seem far less likely at this point, and if it were chosen, it would be suboptimal for the prospects of the I-15 line mentioned above. Notably, unlike some of the other routes discussed in this video, this could be implemented from Redlands to Perris today, as the tracks already exist, and even with Metrolink's new pulse schedule that was started in October of 2024, there is still plenty of capacity on the Perris sub, and even more will be unlocked once the double tracking projects are complete. Then it would be able to grow in the future as the Perris Valley line is built out to San Jacinto and eventually Temecula. Next on the list is the Chino Valley line, or given a potential route and use case, maybe it would be better to choose another name that doesn't end in line to differentiate it from the rest of the Metrolink network. Continuing with the tradition of naming things after what they're replacing, Dairy Dasher could work, but I digress. This is proposed as a connection of sorts between the Riverside line and the I-15 line, as well as provide service to an area which is otherwise a bit isolated from the transit point of view. The idea is to start at Pomona downtown, then proceed east to the point where the Chino Industrial Lead splits off from the LA sub, and make use of it to head down to Chino. However, the lead does end at Benson Avenue, so the question is where to next? The eastern endpoint is envisioned to be the Limonite station proposed above for the I-15 line, but between there and Benson Avenue, there are arguments for several different alignments. At the moment, the expansion between State Route 83 or Euclid Avenue and Archibald on the east, and west between Riverside Drive and Eucalyptus Avenue on the north and south is all still agriculture, with an occasional waft of the scent of cow manure to remind everyone of that fact. However, the city of Ontario has already designated most of it as the Ontario Ranch. See, what did I say about naming things after things that are replacing? Which is supposed to comprise approximately 50,000 homes at build-out, though they have also been approving proposals to redesignate some of the plots that were supposed to be housing to be warehouses instead. The goal is to get to limonite, so a couple of options are available among the several east-west arterials as well as some power line alignments. In previous studies of potential BRT corridors, Edison Avenue was used to get from a proposed transit center in Chino to Limonite Shopping Center. That alignment would have the advantage of serving the Chaffey College Chino campus, but getting down there from Chino Avenue could be a challenge. On the other hand, it could stay on Chino Avenue, south along Cucamonga Creek, turn east into the power line corridor along Schaefer Avenue until Haven Avenue, then south on Haven to Limonite, and east on Limonite to the shopping center / I-15 station. I'm leaning more towards the latter route, as Ontario continues to approve many warehouses in the area north of the Chino Airport, meaning that there is less of an obvious corridor for the train to use if it goes the other way. Along the chosen route, station ideas besides Limonite and downtown Pomona include Sumner, Limonite, Haven, Ontario Ranch Road, Archibald, Vineyard or the Sports Complex, Euclid Avenue, Central Avenue or the Chino Civic Center, Philadelphia Street, and Mission Boulevard, for a total of 10 in the corridor that is a little over 16 miles long. The final rail service to consider is the Imperial Valley Line. While most definitions of the inland region do not include Imperial County, they are part of SCAG, where they tick the box for the least populous county, and they are certainly not closer to Lausanne, so this seems to be the best video to have the discussion. In recent years, growth is occurring out there as people move out from San Diego, as well as due to the development of resources such as geothermal energy and lithium extraction. If you made it this far in the video, drop a cactus emoji in the comments. Most of Imperial County's cities and population are along the existing rail line, which stretches from the UP-Yuma subdivision in Lineland on the eastern end of the Salton Sea to the US-Mexico border in a corridor which is a little over 40 miles long. This seems ideally situated for a service similar to Arrow or Sprinter, though both of those are only about a quarter or half of the length respectively. Astute viewers might have noticed that while service to Redlands and San Bernardino, which is where Arrow runs, has been described in both this video and the prior one, a service plan has not been directly described for Arrow itself. The reason for that is that there really is no point in having Arrow exist by itself when several other services are also running its route, so it would be absorbed into those instead. In terms of what would happen to the Arrow rolling stock, that will be covered in another video, so you know the drill. Hit that red button if you haven't already done so. Looking at the line in Imperial County, the following station options seem most ideal. Starting in Calexico, a station similar to Great America in San Ysidro would anchor the southern end and provide access to the border crossing to Mexicali. After that, a station could be located in the unincorporated community of Heber, then in the cities of El Centro, Imperial, Brawley, Calipatria, and Nyland. Services should be at least a base of half hourly and up to every 15 minutes for peak periods. This would be a great addition to the travel options in Imperial County and also help people get to the geothermal and lithium extraction jobs, bringing up closer to the Salton Sea. Finally, last but not least, we are going to talk about the Big Bear connector. In several previous studies, options for getting up to Big Bear have been explored, with varying proposals put on the table as a result. The one which seems most reasonable is one which would land in Highland near the East Valley Municipal Water District headquarters on Greenspout Road. And if you've been wondering all along exactly how or where trains would go when extended to Highland, the secret is now out. The end of the line for the IELC and SB line trains would provide for direct transfers between them and the connector, fulfilling one of the goals set out for in the studies. From there, the route travels up some ridges to the Running Springs area, then over to Snow Valley, then across to the south side of Big Bear Lake before ending in Big Bear itself near the village. However, while cog rail technology has been considered in previous studies, for the purposes of this exercise, the Imperial County Line train was the last train line. Instead, this seems like a great opportunity for a gondola. In fact, we already have something similar in the region, the Palm Springs Aerial Tramway. This would be longer and should have more cars, but otherwise should be able to operate like the Palm Springs Aerial Tramway does. This would greatly ease the burden faced by State Route 330 and State Route 18 from all the people trying to get up to Big Bear, especially when it is snowing. Well friends, this is the end of another Inland Rail Vision video, but there's still plenty more to discuss. If you've enjoyed today's video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you know when the new videos arrive, such as the video on the Coachella Valley Rail, the infrastructure needed to support the IE Rail Vision, or many more topics which are in the works, many not even train related. All will be worth the wait. And if there's something you want to see covered, feel free to drop a line about that too in the comments. Until next time, safe travels.